Chelsea, you're unmuted, so go ahead.
Okay, so just a few housekeeping issues before we get started. As we move through the presentation, if you have questions, I would ask if you could kindly please put them in the chat room, and Jose and or Denise Robinson will be keeping track of those questions. And then after the presentation, we can circle back and then we're happy to answer any of the questions that you may have. So with that, if you want to go ahead and share the presentation, Jose. Excellent. So this is our agenda for this evening. The introduction, so welcome. My name is Chelsea Leedstrand. I am the development manager along with Corey Morgan for this project. Thank you again, everyone, for attending this evening. We will be hearing from our partners this evening, DIMPED with the legislative update. I will be providing the development update, the relocation update, and then we will have an update on some of the social services and community outreach efforts that are currently underway at the property, and that will be explained to you by Ebony Johnson, who is with TCB, and she is the boots on the ground at Park Morton. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to our partners at DIMPED to provide us with the legislative update. So next slide, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Samara Gomez, and I am the DIMPED project manager for the Park Morton redevelopment efforts. We have Councilmember Nadeau's office introduced street and alley legislation on the project's behalf, which will allow the temporary closure of Park Road and Morton Street, as well as the extension, Morton Street to Water Street. And we have a temporary, a tentative hearing date scheduled for September 17th. The purpose of this legislation is required if street and alleys are going to be closed. And for purposes of phase 1 of the Park Morton redevelopment, efforts, there will be 2 alleys that will be temporarily closed. Those would coincide with the construction.
Has joined the meeting.
Those would coincide with the construction period as well. And so, I'm sorry, Jose, there's a little bit of feedback.
If you're not speaking, can you mute?
Thank you. So there will be 2 alleys that are going to be impacted by phase 1. The closure is going to be, again, during the construction period, which we estimate to be approximately 24 months. And that's all that I have by way of the update for the street and alley efforts.
Thank you, Samara. Next slide, please, Jose. Thank you. So in terms of the development update, as many of you are aware, that the Bruce Monroe HUD was vacated on June 25th, 2020. And so the Housing Authority and our development partners, DIMPED and TCP Dante's partners, response is that we have currently are working with our legal counsel to review the decision by the zoning committee and to submit briefs addressing the issues that were outlined in the Court of Appeals. So once those briefs, they have not been submitted as of yet, but once they are, we of course anticipate that the zoning commission will review those, and then we will have a better idea upon their response of how we will move forward on the Bruce Monroe site. In the interim, we, as you know, have moved forward with the Park Morton site proper for the redevelopment. And what that looks like is, one, we began the relocation effort, but we've also started the preliminary geotechnical studies and environmental studies necessary to move the project forward. So I think that, well, I know that in the last presentation, we informed you of, the equipment that was going to be on site and the efforts related to getting those tests underway. So those tests have now been completed, and it will help inform us moving forward with the infrastructure on site and also some of the vertical infrastructure on site. In addition, we have also submitted for raise permits for the buildings in phase 1, understanding that how you move forward with raise permits is the building has to be emptied or vacated. Nobody can be living there, of course. Then we have to go through a mitigation process. Then the building has to be decommissioned before we can even move forward with any type of demolition. And it also has to be approved through the city. And so the preliminary of the permits is just to prepare for what is ahead. And we anticipate for the buildings that are vacated and we move forward with the mitigation and decommissioning to be achieved sometime in 2020, early 2020. But of course, this is all contingent upon our relocation effort. So moving on to the next bullet. One of the other things, no, I'm sorry, not the next slide. Thanks. No worries. One of the other things that we are working on currently is making ready additional units in phase 2 so that any family who's currently living in phase 1 that is either having a challenge finding temporary replacement housing or has just decided that they want to remain on site during the redevelopment, we will be moved over to phase 2. This is also a precaution that we're undertaking so that we don't have single families in buildings, so that we can really consolidate families in buildings, one, for safety reasons, and 2, again, as I mentioned before, so that families who wish to stay on site will be able to do so in phase 2, live in phase 2 of the development. In addition to, there's been some concerns about safety. So we are dedicated DCHA in making sure that all the residents are safe. So our property management is involved in making sure as buildings are being vacated that they're being secured properly. We have our HPD officers on site daily, as well as working with DCPD to patrol the neighborhood to ensure the safety of all of our residents. And of course, we have the Parkview Engage website that we made live, I think, a couple months ago. And so all of the updates, as soon as we have updates, we will be putting them up on that website, as well as copies of the steering committee presentations, present and past. You can go ahead and change, next slide, please.
Chelsea, can I make a small amendment to the first bullet? That the briefings have been filed in the zoning commission because there was a deadline at the beginning of August. So we are not filing anything else. Now we're just waiting for further.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Aspasia. Next slide. So I know what we've heard with the community in terms of the equity plan that was submitted by Ms. High our resident council president, and co-chair of the steering committee, is an equity plan outlining some of the things that the residents and the advocacy community wanted to see happen in regards to this development. And so what we did was kind of based on the items that were outlined in the equity plan, we tried to find similarities and or adjacencies to things that we are either currently doing or looking to do, and then those resolutions. I'm not going to read all of this verbatim because it's a lot. Everybody, this plan will be made available, but I would like to touch on a couple of things. So in terms of the right to return, back in 2016, DCHA did put forth a resolution saying that all residents who are displaced through redevelopment will have the right to return, and in being specific to Park Morton, on or before November 2014. And so what that means is that any resident who was living on the property on or after November 2014 will have the right to return to the redeveloped site in a new unit. Okay, so the next bullet addresses larger unit sizes. So one thing that DCHA does whenever we go through a redevelopment is look at the existing community and the families living in the community, their family size, their projected family needs. And we also do go through a cursory analysis using their relocation assessment that really looks to predict what type of unit size they will need in the future. And so based on the existing units or families, I should say, based on the existing families who were at the site from November 2014 to present, the Housing Authority has pulled their information, has done an analysis. And so the unit mix that's been put forward in this development is directly correlated to the needs of the families. So if there are families who are currently living at Park Morton or have been or have relocated since November 2014, they will be, their unit size will be included in this new unit mix. So in terms of Build First, I believe it was in 2012, 2013, the Avenue project was the first Build First site for the Park Morton redevelopment. And that contains 27 replacement units. And so residents at Park Morton were, upon delivery of that building, were relocated into the Avenue. In addition, it was always intended that Bruce Monroe was going to be a Build First site. However, in light of the current decision by the Court of Appeals, that project has been stayed. And so we're trying to work through those issues, but in the interim, in the interest of, getting new units available for families immediately or as soon as possible, I should say, we have moved forward with the redevelopment at Park Morton proper, which is currently underway in regards to the relocation process. We're looking to relocate families in phase one. As I mentioned earlier, families in phase one have the option to either relocate the voucher, relocate to another public housing unit within DCHA's portfolio, or they have the option to move over to phase two in order for us to clear phase one so that we can begin demolition and also the infrastructure. You can go ahead and next slide, please, Jose. So in terms of the topo rights, in this particular situation, the topo rights are not applicable. In terms of the job creation, DCHA and of course the developer are committed where we are able to provide opportunities for residents and as it relates to construction and other activities related to that construction. So it might not be trades, but it could be other avenues for employment. Going down to bullet 6, affordable units must remain affordable during the life of the project. And that is mandated within the PUD that is existing currently, that the affordability is to last 99 years. Number 7, the redevelopment must be consistent with the district's comprehensive plan, and based on the feedback that we received from the zoning commission, it does comply with the district's comprehensive plan. Lastly, bullet 8, ensure that any relocation plan does not adversely affect Park Morton residents. As I said before, DCHA is working with residents as it relates to relocation, despite what despite the challenges that COVID has presented. DCHA is not requiring anyone to move if they choose not to during this unprecedented time. Any vouchers that were issued during this time or even previously to COVID but have been affected by COVID, those vouchers will receive additional time. Nobody is being forced to move. Right now, we're just working with residents. We have had several people continue to move over this past 6 months. And if you want to go to the next slide, Jose. So as of, this is an update as of this week. We currently have had 51 families move from the site, and we currently have 72 remaining. I was trying to read Ms. High's comment, I'm sorry. You can go to the next slide, Jose. This is a depiction of an infographic, I should say, of where the families who have relocated are currently living within the ward. So we can see that it's dispersed. I would say, I mean, it's pretty evenly dispersed with the exception of Ward 2 and Ward 1. I mean, I'm sorry, Ward 2 and Ward 8. But families have been successful in relocating all across the city. Next slide, please. And so this is the community engagement monthly activity update. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ebony Johnson, who is the TCB service provider on site. Ebony?
Hi, the slide displays the events that TCB and along with one of our counterparts that we work really closely with, HOU, the services that we have been providing on site and off site. It also talks about Daniel, who's the behavior health specialist with DBH. I'll talk a little bit about the things that TCB has done, and if you all have any questions, just let me know. We do weekly housing support and wellness check-ins, whether it's through email, telephone calls. Nothing much has been done on site. Everything has been virtual with the check-ins. And normally if we have a situation where a resident reports something that's needed, we provide a referral to either relocation or to property management wherever it's needed. We have also done one-on-one credit coaching. We had I know I have assisted probably about 5 or 6 residents one-on-one with credit coaching. We also have a couple of people who have recently signed up to receive credit coaching. I think I have a request of maybe 3 other people who recently reached out to me for that service. We have been doing weekly financial workshops, well, bi-weekly, let me change that, bi-weekly financial literacy workshops in collaboration with HOU. I send an email out weekly that includes meal giveaway locations for COVID testing sites, and also educational resources for kids, and where they can also obtain any other resources they may need. We did this was about a month or so, we did a care package delivery, which we did some canvassing on site. We haven't been on site really since then. But the bags, each resident was provided with a bag that included resources, some activities for them to do while in the home, also some safety measures such as face masks, I believe sanitizer, and also just some motivational items in there as well, like a stress ball and just things to kind of keep them contained while in the home. I have also done like a health and nutrition virtual activities, which involve just giving the residents healthy recipes and recipe sharing events. And we have also done, in collaboration with HOU as well, off-site stabilization, just connecting residents to the resources. We had one resident who was really going through some stuff, but we were able to connect him to relocation, and they kind of, handle it from there.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
And just so the committee is aware that DCHA, can somebody mute? Thank you so much. DCHA does keep track of all of the residents. I saw a comment, does the map represent all of the families from November 2014 until present? And it does not. It is only including currently the families that have moved from June 2019 to present. But understand that the Housing Authority does in fact track all of the residents, and we do have a database of all of the families from November 2014 to present. And there has been a request for where those families are currently living, and the Housing Authority is working on creating a map to depict that as well. It's just it takes a little bit longer because we have to, we went through an update to our system. And so with the update to our system, it's just taking us a little bit longer to update the list that we had before to match them with the new addresses, because there's been a conversion of software. So we're working on that. We should have that update for you by the next steering committee meeting. You can go to the next slide, please, Jose. So Ebony, do you want to speak to this as well?
I'll just touch on it briefly. This is just basically, we submitted just some policies once we are back, back on site permanently, just policies to maintain social distancing and also safety measures for residents and for ourselves. So this is just talking about the policies and procedures we'll use while we're in the pandemic.
Thank you. And then you can go to the next slide, please, Jose.
Chelsea, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I wanted just to provide a quick update. It was an agenda item at the beginning on our some conversations that Ms. High, myself, and a few others on the call had been part of around technology and access for students. Can I just give that update right now?
Please, yes.
That works. So first of all, I just want to thank Ms. High. I know that we were brought together by the chair of our board, Chairman Albert, to have a discussion on a number of the things that we've talked about here, but also some of the challenges and frustrations that are being felt, not just at Park Morton, but at a lot of properties across the district related to technology access. So one of the things I just wanted to continue to reiterate is that the Office of Resident Services, and in particular the Youth Engagement Team, has been conducting surveys across all of our properties. I mean, literally calling every unit to get information from families on, do they have internet connectivity? Do they need a device? Have they been in touch with their school? How can we help in connecting them to them? We, in particular, over the course of the last couple of weeks, as we get closer to the return of school, have been refining those efforts. And I asked our team to go back and make those calls again to the residents that are remaining at Park Morton, because we are working closely with a lot of those schools, right? Schools are asking us for help too in terms of connecting to students, because as some of you may have read in some articles that have been written in the last couple of weeks, schools have devices and they're trying to get those devices into the hands of students. We know that not every school has all the devices, but that a lot of them do have made these preparations to make sure they can connect back to there. I was hoping I would have a more concrete update on another part, but I will say this. We've also been having some conversations with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the department in charge of all the IT and connectivity issues for the district. They're going to be unveiling some information about a program that will help to ease access and help pay for access to enhanced internet access for families who are either TANF or SNAP recipients. I don't want to steal their thunder. I know that that information is coming out shortly. I've asked to how can we help amplify those efforts, and in particular, how can we make sure that they reach back out, in particular to Park Morton families, to make sure that they can take advantage of that program. So as soon as I have that information in hand, I will share that back out to you. Ms. High, I know this is something that we went back and forth on email about last week, but I reached back out to OCTO today. I think they're almost there, and I want to make sure that I respect that process. But that's another thing. The last thing I wanted to say is the development team and the entire team has indeed gone ahead and procured some devices in the meantime. We're basically trying to figure out how best to deploy those devices. In particular, want to make sure that we can reach those families who are unable to secure devices from their school. They'll be able to, if they're not able to get one from there, that we can probably step in and help fill that gap until a device from school is provided. And so hopefully we'll see some information taking shape about that in the coming days and next week as this whole process continues to evolve. But again, just wanted to recognize Ms. High's advocacy on this front, and we'll continue to work on this issue because we know it's important. And the district, DCPS, the Deputy Mayor's Office of Education have all been really hard at work trying to get this to happen in time for the beginning of school next week.
Thank you so much. And so that concludes the presentation portion. And so our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 19th, 2020, same time. And we will, as we get closer to the date, let you know, in light of, the current situation with COVID-19, whether we'll be virtual or in person. And so with that, I guess we can go to the questions. I'm going to pull up the chat. And so bear with me while I scroll through and find the questions. So the first question is, why was that counted? And I believe this is referring to the avenue. Why was the avenue counted in the redevelopment when another developer made that building. Actually, so it was anticipated, and the avenue was always anticipated as a build first for Park Morton. We partner, the CHA partners with developers to build units, and in this particular case, the avenue was slated as such. This is a normal practice for the Housing Authority. We've done it with other new community sites. A good example would be for the Lincoln Heights redevelopment. We have the building on Nanny Helen. I think it's 4300 Nanny Helen, and then we also have
4800 Nanny Helen, Providence, and the Strand.
Yeah, well, and Providence and Strand, and we also have, the building 5201 Hayes. Thank you, Denise. So that is an example of how the Housing Authority and DMPED have partnered to provide opportunities for the new communities redevelopment sites with offsite units. The next question. Sorry if this is taking me so long. So it says, what does activities for families during the pandemic mean? I believe that Ebony went through that, but just to reiterate, like TCB and HOU provide services as it relates to like credit, financial counseling, also just basic access to masks, access to food, as Jose mentioned, access to technology, and also there's Daniel Sachs, who is I think he's a therapist who also is providing services for families who are feeling anxiety, stress during this pandemic, and also should they experience any of those issues and as it relates to the relocation process. And I answered the question, does the map that was shown earlier account for all of the residents who lived at Park Morton on or before November 14th? So again, no, the map that I showed in this presentation only depicts the families who have relocated since June of 2019. However, the Housing Authority is working on providing an additional map that will depict the full spectrum of residents who have relocated since November of 2014. And for clarification, oh, I just lost my place. For clarification, is it on or before November 2014 or on or after November 2014? And it is residents who have lived on the property on November 1st, 2014 and after are eligible for or have the right to return to the redeveloped site. Meaning there is a unit that has been designated based on their family size. The question, do the rest of the kids on site? I'm not sure of the, oh, okay, I'm looking at the, okay.
I think that was Tanya asking about
Yeah,
Ms. High's comment, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chelsea, really quick, Ms. High brought up this question around, was there ever a commitment to keep families only at Ward 1? I know that that was the intention, obviously, with the Bruce Monroe parcel, but in terms of other relocation, how have we accounted for that? You know, where families are going?
So, like families who are issued vouchers have a choice on where they want to move to. And so we have mobility specialists who provide referrals for families, and then and the referrals are available units based on their family size and occupancy. And so those families take those referrals, and of course they go view units, and they make a choice to move, wherever they decide. So we provide referrals for all 8 wards, but it's up to the resident or family to decide where they actually make their move. We're not steering anybody to any particular location. Of course, we wanted to try to keep as many families in Ward 1 as possible. And as you mentioned, Jose, that was the intent with the Bruce Monroe development, that was to be our build first site. So in light of the current situation, we were not able to move forward with that project at this time, and why our push is to get in the ground in phase 1 as soon as possible. And those families who choose not to leave Park Morton proper, we'll move them over to phase 2 so that they can stay on site while the new building is being built. And then once the building is built, we'll of course relocate families from phase 2 over into the new building, and then we'll begin phase 2 of construction.
Chelsea, the next question is, Ms. Cooper asked that she heard us say the residents are not being forced out. She's hearing residents are feeling pressured to leave. Why are residents feeling pressured? Do you want to speak to that on relocation?
Residents are not being pressured to leave, especially during the pandemic. As I said earlier, any vouchers that were issued, they have been extended based on the pandemic, and the housing authority is being patient in terms of families needing to move out of phase 1. Again, those families who wish to stay on site will be relocated to phase 2, and we're in the process of making rented units ready now. I anticipate them to be the first units to be turned over in the coming weeks, and so families will be moved over, and they'll be on site. So if families are feeling pressured, I would ask them to reach out to myself or Corey Morgan, and we can have a discussion in regards to how best to assist them with their search, or to find a remedy to whatever issue they're having currently.
Thank you, Chelsea. I want to just reiterate that that's also something that I've been in constant communication with Daniel Pielago from Empower DC on. Daniel and I speak almost daily, and he shares concerns with me that I can look into for him. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can do so as well.
Thank you, Jose.
I'm going to throw this one out there, and I'll figure out who wants to take it. When the mayor allocated $36 million to Park Morton and Berry Farm, did she lay out any specific goals for DCHA as to how the funds are going to be allocated towards the project? I know we have some of our colleagues from DemPed on here as well, but do we want to speak to? I don't know if that number landed at that 36 million. Denise or Samara, can you remind me what number we landed on for that?
Yeah, that is the correct number.
Okay.
And so how I would answer that is that we are working intimately with DCHA to figure out how those funds will be allocated for those 2 specific projects. A lot of it will be determined on the needs of the individual projects. So specific to construction costs, infrastructure costs, all of those things, which are different because they're 2 different properties. So we're going through the analysis now to determine how much will be allocated for each project.
Thank you, Denise. Commissioner Ray asked a question, and this spoke to some of what we covered at the last meeting. We talked about our family self-sufficiency program, Commissioner, as it pertained to home purchase opportunities, and there have been ongoing discussions also because there is also a home ownership program within our HCBP program. And so what is happening right now, and Chelsea, feel free to add this too, is those programs, in addition to the home ownership opportunities that'll be part of the development, are all basically communicating that we can come back at the next steering committee and provide a comprehensive update of what's going to be in place, how it will be applied for, and who the proper contacts are. I would tell you actually, as soon as it's in place, we'll share it back out to the steering committee and to the residents. It's actually part of the discussion that's happening during the briefings for lease ups. Residents are actually informed at those lease ups about all the opportunities before them in that. And so it's being shared in real time, but we'll come back and also share comprehensively on both of the sites and to the steering committee as well.
Thank you, Jose.
I know we've seen some questions come in. Are there any questions from anybody who has not put them in the chat that would like to ask at this time? You can unmute yourself and pose your question if you like.
No questions? Okay.
Ms. Cooper has asked, can you address how the existing units are being maintained? Are repairs being done? Ms. Watson from PMO, would you like to speak to our current operating posture right now during COVID on this particular question?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Ms. Watson. I am the area manager, DC Housing Authority for Park Morton. So at this time during our COVID procedures, we are only handling emergency cases, only in that just is to minimize the footprints and contact with the residents while they are dealing with this pandemic. So it is only emergencies that we are addressing.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Any other questions?
Sorry, this is Marcus Hedrick. I'm not sure how much of a question it's here and how much of it is just wanting to express a sense of concern. You know, the first promise with the new communities was build first to avoid displacement, because we know temporary relocations contribute to permanent displacement. Like the literature and post-mortem from Hope 6 sort of support that. And, you know, the slide that showed how many folks who got vouchers have moved into different wards just reinforces the challenge that there's going to be to get these folks back into our community. Our neighborhoods are changing very quickly, and when these families leave, it changes the dynamic of the neighborhood. And they're not, even if we ask them to come back, the neighborhoods are at risk of changing so much that they're not going to feel welcome back. And it's really disappointing for me that we've just kind of accepted that. And I mean, at this point, you know, I guess we're accepting the loss on that. But I'm not convinced that we're going to be able to get many of these families back. And the focus in describing next steps in this project in terms of units and buildings and less on my neighbors and the families that were attending, you know, the same school with my kids and playing on the same playgrounds is, I'm sitting here shaking in frustration. Like the fact that you mentioned the 27 replacement units at the Avenue. Like, again, I understand that the original plan was that those are replacement units. We know that only a handful of our neighbors at Park Morton actually got to move into those because of the communication failures and breakdowns in human capital. And I know folks are committed to trying to do better next time, but the evidence shows that we are now facing a truly uphill battle in getting our neighbors back. I'm really concerned about that, and I hope that stays in your minds, and we continue to challenge ourselves to find ways to keep the families we have here, because as far as I can tell, we've broken the very first promise of this. And so everything else we do now is just to kind of salvage as much from a broken project as we can. Sorry, that's it, I'm done.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Hendricks. And again, I understand your concern, and it was always the intent of the Housing Authority to try to keep as many families at Park Monroe Park Morton in the neighborhood. And that was, what Bruce Monroe was all about. Bruce Monroe was to be our large scale build first site so that families could stay in the neighborhood and literally move across the street. However, events beyond the housing authority's control has prevented that from occurring. And so that is why we are doing our best to get the phase 1 of Park Monroe proper started so that we can keep as many families in the neighborhood as possible.
Ms. High is saying that there was a $37 million funding gap pre-COVID. Where are we going to get that money from? I think Denise just spoke to the fact that the current allocation of the budget is still being obviously assessed between our new communities projects, and that we're working closely with those teams to resolve these issues so we can get to closing and continue to move forward on this. I think we spoke about the challenges about the REN as part of the equity plan contrast that we had in the earlier slide. And Mr. Commissioner Ray, you raised your hand. You said you had a question.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No
Are you
worries.
done? Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
I do want to say to Marcus's point, and I think one thing that we should be starting to think about as a committee is, as we hopefully get out of COVID, that events and opportunities to bring people back into the community from time to time, to let them see how things are progressing, to make sure that they have a connection to the people that are here. We should be thinking about ways to do that. It will be harder, until we get past the COVID situation, but let's put that on the agenda for future.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so that's really around outreach, and we spoke about that, Commissioner Ray. The Housing Authority is aware of where everyone is that has lived at Park Morton from November 1st, 2014 to present. And one of the ways that we are trying to stay in contact is working with our service provider to provide outreach as best as that we can, and send out correspondence and asking residents to self-select so that they can maintain contact with not only the Housing Authority but also with TCB and HOU for those support services that are available.
Ms. High asked the question, what do we plan to do if the Friends of Bruce Monroe submit another appeal? How will it deliver the units that we've promised? I'll just jump in and say, obviously, the DEMPED and DCHA are actively at work to try to make sure we can find a way forward quickly. I think there's unity, obviously, on trying to make sure that we can get that project up and out of the ground quickly. It's a great location. It would help to serve and really to deliver upon a lot of the things that were discussed at the very genesis of this project. But obviously, we'll continue to work on that front related to that.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Thanks very much. To that point, and maybe a couple others, I'm going to say a few things because I see there's some follow-up questions in the chat too, so maybe I can help with that. The people of Park Morton have been waiting for this project for so long, and it is not at all surprising to me that when faced with an aging property that has reached the end of its useful life, such that all the maintenance in the world cannot make it dignified, that people are making the choice to go somewhere else for the duration of the project. So, I think, people may talk about pressure to move, but frankly, I think the pressure is the clock. Folks are fed up, and who can blame them? there's a lot of reasons that we're here today, but I do have to say this. The lawsuit that was filed by 3 people has been holding up this housing for years. And I really think, I cannot emphasize enough this blatant NIMBYism has put Park Morton residents in a really difficult situation, because those of us who have been working on this project for years are doing so in earnest. And we've gotten to a point where the build first site is going to be Park Morton itself, because so many people have left. And I am not generally someone who points fingers, but today I can say very clearly that people who have filed this lawsuit are very much responsible for the recent number of people who've left. And so I agree, we need to do everything we can to make people feel included. But as far as that site goes, we're doing everything we can on council to update the maps to make it so that site will always be viewed in the future by the courts as a site that is meant to be a build first site for a project like this, and that it will be Park Morton's build. So just so you know, we are changing some of the underlying assumptions about that property so that we are not open to future lawsuits. And that is critical. And we are doing that across the city because we need the housing. Let's comprehensive plan and the future land use map. And you know, there may be people on this call who disagree with me, maybe even some of the plaintiffs on this call. But I would agree with any assertions that this project was rushed or not thought out. And this has not been rushed in any way. We've had many, many community hearings. Council's taken it up 3 or 4 different times. ANC's taken it up. And it's really critical in my mind that we keep pushing. But I just want folks to know that like there's a very clear reason why we have not been able to build yet. And that is because of a lawsuit from some people who, frankly, you know, tie their lawsuit on all kinds of pretty bows. But at the end of the day, it's NIMBYism. And, you know, I don't abide by that. So we're going to keep doing what we do. We're excited about the hearing September 17th. And we're going to keep things moving. And Tanya and I are, Tanya's my chief of staff who's on the call today. We're always here. Folks have questions about what council's doing or the funding streams or all of that, because we've been here working real hard to get this done. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Is there any?
There's one more question. Chelsea says, Mr. De Rosario asks, because 606 passed in 2019, it says residents that have left or been are relocated, they won't be able to return to Park Morton because DCHM may deem them already properly housed. Is this true?
No, sir. So 1606 was actually passed in 2016, and so the resolution is the right to return. So for Park Morton and their specific right to return, it's any family who was living on the property November 1st, 2014 to present. And so, as I said earlier, those families have the right to return to a new unit in the redeveloped site. And our unit mix is directly, our proposed unit mixes are directly correlate to the families who have lived on site from that period of time to present.
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm not seeing any additional questions right now in the chat. Anyone else?
Okay. I really appreciate everyone's time this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your commitment and being part of this committee. We rely on you very much to keep the pulse of what's happening and to also assist us with our decision making as we move forward. So our next meeting is November 19th. That's correct, Jose, the November 19th date?
That's correct, yep.
And so, as I said earlier, we will keep you informed as how that how that meeting will be conducted, whether it's virtual or in person. Likely it'll be virtual, but
I like your optimism. Unfortunately,
I mean, the kids are out of school, so I rely on how we deal with our children, how we will, work in the offices. So thank you again. If you have any questions, concerns, please feel free to reach out to me directly.
hold on. Ms. High says she has one more question. Ms. High, you want to put it in the chat box, or what number are you on so I can unmute you?
I see one that says, is there a document included in the HCV packet that residents are signing that says DCHA will contact them directly when it is time to return? I am not 100% sure of a document that they're signing, but what I do know, and it's also cited in the Park Morton relocation plan, that as the units come available, families will begin to be contacted to get them ready for the redevelopment. And one thing I also wanted to say in regards to that is with TCB as our partner, they also have this support services arm, and they will also be managing the development. And so with that being said, TCB, one of the things that we've talked about is them really being present, not only in the beginning of the development and through the relocation process, but through the entire redevelopment of the site. And so, that's where these, the mail correspondence comes in, the text, the emails, the meetings, the virtual meetings, so that, because we really do want to see residents come back to the site and be successful in life.
Ms. High asked if we can provide a copy of the packet, and the answer to that is yes. I will unpack some HCVP and post it to the site, and also email it to the steering committee.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, I believe that there's always somebody on site at Park Morton from the relocation team, and if not every day, I'm certain like Tuesdays and Thursdays that there's somebody on site where you can go to the office and actually pick up a hard copy.
So yes, exactly. Ms. Lee Strand, there is a relocation person on there Tuesdays and Thursdays. Many times it's by appointment only. So if something is needed, they can leave a voicemail or contact Ms. Jackson herself, leave a message for her to know that somebody's coming instead of just coming into the office.
Thank you.
Can DCHA and NCI provide the handout of the number of residents actively engaged in human capital services?
Yeah, I think we can do that. I know that we, or the development team, TCB, HOU, keeps a log of residents that they serve. So we certainly can put something together and share it with the steering committee.
And just so everybody knows, we have also copied and pasted all of the chat questions that will be used to generate the minutes for this meeting. And the minutes and the recording will be posted to the dcha.us/Park Morton.
And with that, this meeting is officially concluded. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And should you need anything, please feel free to reach out to myself, Jose, for any additional questions that you might have. And have a fantastic evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.